Y'all, season 3 of Girl Call Me with Tanya and Jessica is all about community.
Because listen, in a world that's getting wilder by the day, one thing we know for sure, we can't do this alone.
And this season, we're diving into how we show up for each other, build our circles, and find joy, no matter what's going on in this crazy world.
And of course, we're bringing our usual mix of real talk, hot topics, and deep conversations because you know we have things to discuss.
And as always, we're keeping it raw, keeping it funny, and keeping it real. Because if we can't be honest here, then girl, call me later.
So grab your tea, get comfy, and get ready for a season full of laughs, love, and the kind of conversations you need in your life.
It's season 3, and we're just getting started.
It's springtime. Everyone catches themselves wondering, why are they sniffling? Why are their eyes itching? Why is their skin itching? Why is their hair flaking? Because as much as people love the spring and love everything blooming,
Okay, good.
girl,
Okay, girl.
it gets you. It'll get you.
It will get you. If no one, not everyone can see my T-shirt, but my T-shirt says, what does it say? Unbothered.
So you're
That's
unbothered
gonna be
by these allergies or what?
I'm just unbothered, period. I'm just gonna say, welcome everyone, like and subscribe. My wife told me we should be saying that in the beginning, the middle, the end. She's like,
Like
we're
and
my
subscribe.
people.
Like and subscribe. Thank you.
Jessica,
Yes, ma'am.
happy spring. It
Happy
is spring. Everything is in bloom.
Oh, you know what? Can I say something? Actually, this just came
No.
into my mind. This just spoke to my spirit. You know, I heard someone talking about when someone says to you, you know, you're in a store or whatever, and someone says, how can I help you, like, young lady? That's shade. No matter how they mean it, that's shade because you're not young.
Oh,
right?
wow.
So when people come to you like, how you doing, young lady? And like someone thinks he's being cute. It's like that. I don't like that because I feel like you're coming at me some type of way. Because he's not actually calling you young.
I think you might need to take that to the therapy chair because I'm not sure why you feel it's offensive. Even if you're in, let's just say, if for those Southerners and those folks in Texas and those folks throughout the country that understand how to be polite,
no,
it is not.
Who are known for their passive aggression. The South is that's what it is. It's they're meant to be polite, but it's really like, I'm saying this, but I know you're old. But I know if I say this, it'll make you feel good, so I'm going to say it.
You know what's really offensive is when you're in the drive-thru at Starbucks and some young person who took your order looks at your shirt that you're wearing to work and says, "Oh my God, my mom has that." That is insulting. I'm not sure young lady is insulting
No.
when you look almost 30 and you're telling me that I'm like your mama.
I'd rather a young person call me ma'am than an old person feel like they're relating to me and call me young lady and think I'm going to bat my eyelashes and be like, oh my gosh, why thank you. Why thank you, sir. Get out of my face is what I want to say.
You know what? I think this is what happened when we landed in Martha's Vineyard. Your shoulders were up. I need you to take your shoulders down. Just like maybe it's an exercise in take a deep breath in and take.
When we landed in Martha's Vineyard, you were the one who I had to pull back. And I said, I think that man is just trying to say hello. And you were concerned. He was trying to tell you to get off his island.
He probably said, good afternoon, young lady. I mean, that's probably.
He probably did. Damn. Right. Anyway.
On that note.
Yeah. That.
Well, you know what? Let us know in social or in the comments.
Or by text, which is usually what happens.
Or text. If you think when someone says, good afternoon, young lady, if you find it offensive, like Jessica.
Okay. Now, but actually, this is very funny, Tanya, because this speaks to, we were talking about this earlier this week. You walk through life hoping that people are showing up their best.
I do.
And I walk through life knowing that they aren't.
You walk through life going, you're trash, you're trash, you're trash.
No.
End up not being trash. You're like,
pleasantly pleasantly surprised. Exactly. And then I'm like, oh, maybe we'll be friends. But yes, you're right. I walk through life knowing most people probably gonna disappoint me. These days, definitely. But
These days, of
that is
course.
my disposition, I have to say. You always walk through going, you know what, they probably meant well. And I'm
I
like,
hope for the best. I really want to hope that people are actually going to be authentic, real, supportive, loving, and caring, and actually care for me.
well, it's
That's
just
what
so
I.
interesting. Your hypervigilance doesn't show up there. My hypervigilance shows up like I know someone's after me. So I'm just gonna keep my eyes front, back, side.
Not, I have enough things to worry about. It's almost like a spiritual reaction to people that you want to hope for them for the best, and you hope that they're going to show up and do well.
Yeah. Let's not say what the opposite would mean for me, but I believe that for you.
And maybe because I have had, I've had negative things happen, but I think also I have been blessed with being surrounded by people who just showed up well for me.
That's great. Yeah, I think you probably
That's great. Yeah.
screwed. I'd probably say I do think probably some of it may have to do with like you're saying, like you grew up in like a multi-generational house and you're raised by your grandmother, like you had probably a different level of, yeah, like older people tend to have more of that kind of pleasantry, how you do it. I don't know.
They do.
Maybe
They do. They live in
a
that
more
state.
more traditional approach, right? To like
Right.
interactions with others. Yeah.
Right. And I think I did. I was raised in pretty much, especially my grandmother. I mean, always and forever. I will say she was by far, although she could cut you, she had a demeanor that stayed in the positive
Mm.
and in the positive outlook. And we always had people over. We were always doing stuff for other people. There was always that kind of, I guess it's maybe a servant hood or supportive sort of mindset.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think I took it on.
And did that do you and today we were going to talk anyway about, so this is a nice segue. We were going to talk about kind of spirituality and kind of culture and family traditions and kind of understanding spirituality individually. Do you think how did that first show up for you in life? And do you think it was with your grandma in kind of these more formal church settings and community settings?
I think there is parts of my early life that I resisted the whole traditional church setting. Yes, there was always a Bible, and you could be spanked by the Bible. I mean, you could be in trouble. That Bible, that ruler was always, hardcore. But I remember with my grandmother in particular, she went to church every Sunday. If she couldn't, at one point when she got sick, if she couldn't do church on Sunday, there was church on the TV with some kind of, crazy TV evangelist. And so
Mhm.
I remember we ended up going to Catholic church, but I was totally not into it. But I remember the negotiation I would tell her that I'll go to church. This is probably 10, 13. I'll go to church if we can go to the Mexican restaurant across the street and have huevos rancheros. And she'd be like, fine. And that was part of the ritual. We would go to church, and then afterwards we go across the street to my favorite Mexican restaurant. And to this day, huevos rancheros is by far one of my favorite breakfasts.
Mm. So you think early on you were connecting to kind of the ritual side of it? Not did you feel connected when you were at church, like to this spirituality component, or was it more of a ritual community? This is just what we do on Sunday thing.
I mean, I think it's part of the ritual. I mean, the community. I mean, I think for her, she was very connected and
Sure.
read her Bible
Sure.
every single day. But I think for me, it was until I got later and older then I started
Right.
connecting with the actual spiritual side of it. What about you?
I didn't go to church growing up. So church growing up for me was very much a ritual because if I went, it was because it was someone's communion or it was Easter and I was going to church with someone who was religious or Christmas Eve, same type of thing. So
Right.
it wasn't it felt organized religion felt very traditional to me. Like, or obviously a funeral, right? I went to not a lot of funerals, but a good, handful of
Yeah.
funerals as a kid.
Wow.
And those were in churches. So it felt super traditional. And
That's so
I don't think
interesting.
would
I
feel
never went to a
spiritual.
funeral until I was 20 years old, and it was my grandmother's.
Oh yeah. I definitely went to a couple funerals, family members,
Interesting.
and that was always at church, right? So for me, it felt very so heavy, right? Big music, heavy, a lot of emotion. So I don't know that I connected religion with spirituality necessarily, but I definitely connected it to kind of I definitely was like, this is a life moment, if you will. I wasn't necessarily feeling spiritual, but I definitely was like, oh, this is a moment of connection, right?
But where
Does that make sense?
did you ever in your young life have any sort of sense of or feeling of spirituality? Whether it doesn't have to be like a pew, but
Yeah.
was there any sort of like spiritual connection?
Not at that age. I mean, not at grammar school level. I started going to church when I was in my late teens, early 20s. So moving to somewhere new, looking for community, and community, whether that meant just people who were coming together on Sundays for music and for kind of
Yeah.
praise, or just other people who I felt looked like me. So yeah, I did in my late teens and early 20s. Actually, a really funny story. I didn't grow up in an incredibly like religious town, but when I was in elementary school, do you watch what is that show on HBO called Max that's about the megachurch? Why am I blanking on this?
Oh, it's about the several lives. What is it?
It makes fun of it. It's the Righteous Gemstones.
Never
Have
heard
you
of
ever
it.
watched the Righteous Gemstones?
Never
Okay.
heard of the show.
So the Righteous Gemstones is hilarious, and it is Danny McBride is
Righteous Gemstones.
about a family who owns a mega church, like in the South, and it's like their whole life, and it's just like over the top things that are happening in this mega church. But one of the pieces of the mega church is this thing. I knew it as the power team. So that was something. It was a traveling. This is real life now. Now I'm switching from TV show to real life. In the 90s, when American Gladiators was really big, right? Power team were these people who would like go around doing these big physical feats for Jesus. And what they would come to town, yes, and they'd set up these huge like obstacle courses and they'd rip phone books and it was all in the name of Jesus. And so it would be
Girl,
like
are we talking about a relay race for Jesus? I mean,
that could be like a full show, like a whole competition show, like the American Gladiators, but it'd be for Jesus. So I went to the Power Team show with a friend of mine,
stop.
and I don't think my parents didn't really like know what it was, right? Like it was just like it was kind of like the traveling circus, right? Like where it's like, oh, the blah blah's coming to town and they're renting out a thing and it's gonna, so I went, cool show, whatever. Then they gave me a little pamphlet that talks about like if you didn't accept Christ as your savior, you're going to the lake of fire. Girl, I came home to my mom and I was like, what
Are
what's
we
in this
going to lake? Are we in the lake?
what is in this pamphlet? And I remember I mean, I'm sure my mom was like, I thought she was just going to a little show, little,
Lord.
American Gladiator show. Anyway,
Michelle.
so it I bring up the Righteous Gemstones because I really thought this was like a weird like one-off that happened in my town, and then the Righteous Gemstones, they have this entire thing like play out, and I felt so vindicated. The Power
Well,
Team is what it was called.
I clearly need to check out the Righteous Gemstones.
Righteous Gems, it is hilarious.
Relay for Jesus.
Yeah.
And it's very
Yes.
now when you think about religion, spirituality, did you find it confusing? Did you find it comforting? I mean, it sounds
found
like
it
you were scared.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know that scared, like, I found it big. Like, I didn't think it
Mm.
was I certainly didn't look at it as, like, personal spirituality or a personal relationship with God because it felt so institutional. It felt so big. Like, every time I'm going, it's a Black funeral, and you know how that gets, like, right? We're, like, big music, big, like, hundreds of people, like, so I just thought I didn't even think that that's a space where you're searching for a personal connection because it just, yeah, much bigger than really
For
what
me,
it felt like.
it was always a mixture. My family is a mixed bag. And so you had the Catholic Church, maybe on Sunday, And then you might be doing a few traditional, maybe Jamaican spells with your flauta wata and your candles and basically making, a few things that lighting incense. And then you might be doing some other horoscope. My grandmother loved her horoscope. So it was always around me in different forms.
Yeah.
And in different forms, I mean, my grandmother would also say that she would have dreams. She would have dreams and she was very connected into that side of herself that would, in her mind and in many ways, predict things. And
Right.
she had hunches. And so I was also taught to sort of tap into that part of myself that, sometimes there has been told when I walk into a room, I can feel energy. I can feel your energy before you even know that you got some energy. And it's something that was embraced and celebrated in my household.
So that's interesting. So you, at that young of an age, you felt you maybe didn't know what to call it, but you definitely felt a connection to things.
Yes. I mean, I felt like there was something beyond
The
that
other
was
people.
okay. So it was okay to celebrate God and Jesus and have those
Right.
deep beliefs. But at the same time, it was also okay to believe in your ancestors and the
Right.
gifts that maybe they gave you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think what's interesting is the shift from self. I mean, actually, this isn't interesting. This is anyone who knows me is not probably surprised that for me, I think the first time I tapped into spirituality is through community, is not through self.
Mm.
Not shocking. That's how I
Interesting.
operate in all things, unfortunately. But I find self.
Unfortunately, why is it unfortunate? Are we going
Because,
to unpack this a little?
yeah. Well, no. How much time do you have a couch, and how many degrees do you have to navigate this with me? No, I think I felt it definitely. So when I went to church my first time, when it wasn't the power team or for a funeral or something like that, I felt and I connected to the community was the first time I think I was like, oh, I can find more for me here. Once
Mm.
I witnessed other people doing it, once I felt connections with other people in the room, once I didn't have kind of that skepticism, I think I felt like, oh, now I can open myself up and there is something for me here. But it definitely took community, and it definitely took people that I trusted, seeing their stories, right? Not necessarily them like testifying to me, but seeing what community, what church, what religion had done for them in their lives and how they used it. I had a few of my very good friends who are still my very best friends, people of faith, and I saw what it did for them and how they leaned on their faith in times of joy, in times of sadness, in times of grief. And that is probably what first opened the door for me.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think when I got older, I found spirituality and community. When my grandmother was passed, I was searching for something to feel connected to because I had a deep loss
Yeah.
and I needed to fill that void. And so I think it was about maybe in my early 20s, I found a church group. I will say, and I'll say it because, Catholic Church was the first. Then I started joining this non-denominational church, which in some ways was also not a traditional Black church.
Sounds like Jim Jones.
I did not have any Kool-Aid or whatever it's
The
called.
people's, well, obviously, because you're still here. Well,
I survived. And I will say that for me, I was connected. I found that group because of the music. They were all young.
tell me about
They
that
were
though.
my
Pause on that. How'd you find it through the music if it wasn't Black? You're talking about like the
because
kind of like everyone get in a circle with one person and a guitar. Well, like,
oh, no, they were
oh,
they had like a full band. I mean, there was like live music. We were singing
okay.
Concealed Delivered. I mean, we were singing like
Wait,
Otter.
I want to go back to this wasn't Black people.
This is it. Well, there's a mix. It was a very We Are the World, as my best friend would say, kind of
Singing,
church. Everyone was
singing,
there.
singing Stevie Wonder but God, but add Jesus.
Add Jesus. We would find they would find songs that had almost the religious and then they would put a twist on it. There would be good live singing. There was a band. Girl, the music was on live and it was in Hollywood. So the music was on point. This was not your Scientology.
Sign,
It's not Hollywood.
is that the one? Silent Seal Delivered is wild. What? Okay.
And then we would have traditional hymns like, Amen, like that song, Amen. But I was between the music, the young people, there were some cute people there. It's like, okay,
And everyone out there listening, the one question they know they're asking themselves is and how much of your check was going to these people?
10% because that's what you tithe.
Oh,
that's what's in the Bible, y'all.
Look, 10%'s not bad. 10%'s not.
That's what's in the Bible.
I know, but I'm thinking Scientology money. Is it whole check? Is it realistic?
Once a year, we had a campaign in which you had to sort of do
come out the pocket.
Good. But I will say, for me, although that community did not serve me post, and I'm no longer a part of that institution, we won't get into the other part.
Because you can watch the documentary. Because you can watch the documentary about that group. So we won't get into it here.
On YouTube. You can find it on YouTube. But I will say that I think as you get older and as I aged, community changes. And what I needed when I was healing and probably in my grief journey with my grandmother was very different than what I needed when I got older.
Mm-hmm.
And I think our spirituality and how we connect to spiritual spaces does evolve and change.
Yeah. I mean, I have to ask this just because.
Are we going back?
No. I just want to know, since we're in California and since you were searching for something in your 20s, I know you must ended up at a Scientology meeting once or twice.
Okay. Short story. I will say, everybody who's looking, sometimes you look for a job and you're in your 20s and you're like, I need a little something. I was hired as a phone, they have those people who are callers and you go in. So I would go in
for the Church of Scientology.
Church of Scientology in Hollywood, the Hollywood building. And this
was a regular job. This was a regular job. This wasn't you went to the church and then you got this job. No. This was I applied for a job.
Honestly, and I think at that point, I didn't even know what Scientology is. I mean, I think that was
right.
There was back in then. So I remember going in and these people had these little weird suits on and it just felt creepy. And I remember that I was in this lunch break and I was always snooping. So I would just be like, let me walk around this place and see. And I think I lasted 2 days, just 2 days. Because I think they looked at me and they're like, she's not for us. You were selling some product. I don't even remember what it was.
Say, what were you selling?
It was some vitamin or some kind of product.
Jesus.
Scientology is, they're not doing Jesus. We were selling books and we were selling product. I think it was some vitamin or something.
Trips to the spaceship.
But it was a beautiful, if you are outside of California, if you Google the Scientology building, it is a very historic, almost haunted, and very beautiful space.
Of course, because people work there for no money and slave labor, and so they can live in the dorms there.
Are you telling me you've never been into the Scientology building in Hollywood? You've never been inside?
I've been outside of it. Why would I go inside?
I don't know.
I've never been searching for what they're serving. I don't know.
I wasn't searching. I just wanted a job.
I've never been looking for a job and ended up at the church side. Again, this is going to circle back to the beginning of this episode. You have hopes, you have dreams, and when I knew that they had a boat off of Aruba where they're running money through and believing.
Girl, when did you find this out? That wasn't recent, though. I mean, this was a long time ago.
Yeah, but I wasn't fussing with, I wasn't trying to, no. Back to your question. No, I've never been in the building. The closest I've gotten is something dropped off on my doorstep.
Okay, I've never had that. I mean, maybe from the Jehovah's Witnesses. They always come to my door.
Anyway, okay, so yes. So your answer is yes.
My answer,
Say answer.
Yes. I mean, come on. I mean, I'm dibbed and dabbled with a few things, but I've never like been a member of
Held
the Church of
held
Science. So one of the questions I want to say, who or what in your community helps you feel grounded?
gospel music.
Oh,
I listen to a lot of gospel music,
you
which
do.
helps me, and I listen to traditional, not I shouldn't say traditional
You
'cause
do. It is pretty
I
traditional.
mean, yeah, I'm not listening to Negro spirituals, but I do listen to Marvin Sapp, yeah, so the Winans, Yolanda. Yeah, I listen to a lot of gospel music, and I
don't
do
sleep
that.
on some Negro spirituals, girl.
Wading in the water. Girl, yeah, I know, you had me up in the polar bear, whoa, 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 and that was talk about a Negro spiritual.
Explain a polar bear and how that.
Oh.
I found that spiritually
So
connecting for me.
that was a moment of spiritual connectivity. The Martha's Vineyard polar bears. I think we've talked about the polar bears on here before.
Huh.
The Martha's Vineyard being the first place Black people could vacation, and there's resorts, Black-owned resorts there. And the polar bears was a place that is people used to go before they went to work, before their jobs, Black people, and do like a
Yeah.
dip in the water. And
Yeah.
so there's a group of individuals. I think the woman who started it, she was like 90 years old in the water with us.
Blessing.
And blessings. And so everyone goes out there at like 6 a.m., 6:30, something like that. And you do some like water aerobics in the water in this big circle. And then at the end, there's kind of
You
this
hold
moment
hands.
you hold hands. There's this moment of community and spirituality. And we can't divulge what happens because you're not allowed to once you're a polar bear. You're not allowed to talk
Secrets.
about what happens when everyone's in the water. But there is a moment of connectivity where there's songs that are being sung and you're under the sun and you're holding hands and you're in fellowship with other Black folks from all over the country and you introduce yourself. And I think that definitely is a moment of spirituality. And you definitely feel connectedness, wholeness, something bigger than yourself.
I mean, community.
Definitely feel close to the ancestors. There ain't no question about that.
With that quote,
You're in the water with ancestors. Like the ancestors are with you.
you do
That
feel
is
it. You do feel
no
it.
doubt
And it is
about that.
actually, and it's such a beautiful, almost religious experience.
100%. 100%.
You know, and I think that those moments are so priceless because I don't know if we feel those moments all the time. We
Yeah.
don't have many opportunities in our day to day working with in a corporate America or whatever kind of nonprofits or whatever that we feel such a connection.
Yeah. Because
Um,
we don't find time to be present enough. And in those
Mhm.
moments, you can't help but be present. I would say for me, nature, your question
Mm.
around like where do I find that now?
Yeah.
Music and nature for me, for sure. I mean, trees,
Yeah.
being somewhere in the trees with it's just
In the
yeah.
trees.
I need to be not in a literal tree
Not
house, but
climbing.
not girl, certainly not climbing, but surrounded by trees. When I go to Colorado sometimes up in the mountains, that's an incredibly kind of healing and spiritual place for me. Yeah. The ocean, I mean, I've talked about water and kind of
Yeah.
the as a Virgo, Taurus, Capricorn, very all earth sign heavy, if you will. The water's a place for me that's really, really about connectedness, but mostly about finding self and coming back to myself.
Yeah. I find it with people. I find I am one of those people that find joy and connectivity with groups, particularly groups of people that I select. So if I'm hosting something and you're in my home and we're in a round table and we're having laughs and conversation, those are some ways I feel that spiritual connection with people. And I also, I also find there is a place that I go to that I've been going to for a very long time, Kindred Spirits.
Mm,
And I invited you to come for a reading recently.
Lord.
And it was so great. I mean, I will say that there's healers. I mean, I see someone there, Shauna, and she, in some ways, is a healer. Like, she is connected to the energy and the spirituality of whatever. Like, she'll be talking, and all of a sudden, they're telling me, and I'm like, who's that? Tell me who that is. But it is a space that has tarot card reading. They have crystals, they have candles. Jessica, how did you feel about your first experience getting your first reading? Which I will say I didn't prepare you. I said, girl, I made you an appointment.
Yeah, you did make me an appointment. You did mention to me that it's the beginning of a season. We should do it. I did feel very connected when I drove up because it was located next door to a frozen yogurt shop that I used to always go to in college. And I was like, okay, there's a connection here.
Familiar.
Brought me here, very familiar. But I have always been afraid is the right word, to do anything like that because
Oh, you didn't tell me that.
oh, yeah.
Maybe I
So
didn't
my
ask.
anxiety, it's because I ruminate. I ruminate and I have dread. So I know if someone puts something in my head and says something, it'll spin and it'll stay there like a little marble going through a maze for a minute. So I've always been very nervous about that kind of situation because I don't want to ruminate.
Okay.
That's where I started.
And I respect it.
But I came with an open mind and two people who had been before. So and honestly, you told me as a Black woman, so I already felt more comfortable. But yeah, I definitely did not know what I was getting into. And I was coming in hot. I was coming off a trip that I had been on with a lot of people I didn't know. And like you, I think as an empath, I pick up things along the way from a lot of people and their energy and what's going on in their lives. And so I came a little scattered. And I think she felt that.
So did she gather you though? She gathered
She
you.
gathered me. She gathered me. And then of course me, I'm like apologizing afterwards that it was probably too much work for her. Like I'm people pleasing even in the moment when she's telling me like you need to be bigger, you need to be bolder, you need to not worry about, all these other things. It was amazing. I'm going to be going back next season. I asked her how frequently I can come back. She said, I need you
Take
to
it time.
wait.
Do the work. She needed you to do
She
the work.
said, do the work. So I said, fine. Yeah, but I loved it. I really loved it. I felt like it was very affirming for me. A lot of the things I heard that she said that I heard were things that were not new to me, but she introduced them in kind of a new framework in a different way that I felt was really that I could hear. I didn't know I was allowed to record it like you told me after the fact. I wish I would have.
You got to go back. It's funny because it's almost, you do you're a soft life vixen. And so you do a lot of things for self-care, right? You do your cold plunge, you do yoga, you do your sound bath, you do all of these things that's actually self-work, which is sacred work.
Journaling.
But journaling. And, I think when you go to someone externally, because there's a lot of that is like internal work, right? You're not really talking, you're kind of like internally working. And then you speak to someone. It's important work, self-forgiveness, self-listening, dealing with your inner child practices and listening to that younger child and healing yourself. That is also part of those divine moments and those spirituality that we need to connect with a lot and daily.
Yes, I think that she gave me a lot of affirmations. We talked a lot about different rituals. So like I can't remember if I talked about this on here, but been swapping out my coffee in the morning for matcha.
Right.
That's
Matcha.
warm because it kind of offers me what she shared with me, which was right, was like, I need an embrace in the morning, like a warm embrace. And that's what matcha can provide to me. I'm the kind of person who's always trying to like, even though I know I can't wake up early to work out, even though I know I can't be productive in the morning, I still like shame myself if I can't get out of bed. And the first thing she said to me was like, you need a warm embrace in the morning. And I was like, okay, you're right. Yeah. So things like that. She's also someone who we talked about water a lot for me. Like I'm like that mermaid out of water that like starts to, what's that movie Splash?
Yes.
It's like you got to get her back to water.
You got to get her in or else she's going to die.
Yeah, exactly. Her tail is going to start. That's like me. Like if I've been away from water too long, I got to find my way back ASAP. And I knew that always intuitively. I feel that. Now that she says that, I can feel that. I didn't feel that before. I just knew like, oh, I like water, but I didn't necessarily like click into the healing powers that it has for me, for self. Yeah. I mean, it was great. It was wonderful. I'm probably glad I didn't record it because
You
it'd
would
be
have been
like on
like,
a
right, on a repeat every
yeah,
morning with my matchas. What's next to that?
to be too much.
Thing. We went through like so many different, whether it was when you're a young girl and you got your, Mexican food with your Catholic service,
Bribed to be
bribe spirituality, birth at Black church, and then you are listening to that. You go to that gospel you love because you go to the music, the community, the big hats, the sisters, the aunties, and so forth. Or it's the, teenage years in a non-denominational, might be cult. I mean, it just, there are times
might.
we need different things in our lives.
Yeah.
And when you think about, and none of this to be judged by, right? And it's what I was raised on in some ways. It can all work together to help you in whatever you need. It just connect with it.
So I need to talk about ChatGPT only because
Oh no, not chat.
think-
Lord help us.
only because I think that after I went to see Shauna, there's a few things like I'm not in that space, right? So some of like, especially like the cards, when she was reading the cards and talking about the chakras, I was like, oh, I don't know much about this, but I had written so much. So I was reading some of the things that I had written into ChatGPT, asking more for what things meant.
Chat is
super
all up in
scary.
you're in your mind right now. Chat is
Girl.
on it.
And then it said like, okay, so it's like, this is what it means. And then I'm like, can you give me some affirmations to help me? If this is the space I find myself in, give me some affirmations to help me.
The church of
while I'm
chat.
sitting in that space. The church of chat.
Church.
Girl, it gave me back the affirmations. And then it said, how will you best receive these affirmations? Do you want them in audio read to you and an audio file so that you can play them in the morning with a backtrack of meditative music? Do you want them as a phone screensaver so that you can see them in the morning? Well, this is my chat because
this is scary. I don't have chat like that.
I got chat like that. Chat was like, do you want the phone screensaver? Do you want the audio file? Do you want daily journaling prompts that will help you in these areas? Girl, I'm telling you, chat took it to the next level. Yeah. I'm not saying
everybody out there, please don't give chat access to all devices and your whole life. Okay?
It is a call. I am saying as a way to further your spirituality, it had some good options. The same thing you could do like with the Bible. You could go in there and you could hear a really powerful passage. You could hear a sermon, right, that speaks to you in church. And then you could go back to chat and say, this is what I heard this sermon about today. Can you give me a few journaling prompts this week that help keep this top of mind for me? Try it, everybody.
I go back to the point. Everyone needs to do what they need to do in order to find joy and peace and whatever you need. I do think we need to listen to ourselves more. Our intuition and our intuitive selves are active if you just tap into it. And I've been in this moment of really manifestation and thinking about opportunities for myself and others. And I have tapped into so much more creativity than I ever have in the last several years. And I just think that's where I am. I am in that moment of tapping into myself and looking at opportunity for myself to grow.
Okay.
Because I've gone through this, I've gone to the external. And I think the one thing that Shauna said to me in my session with her was, you are okay. You have healed your inner child. You have done all the work. And I think sometimes we forget that we are good and we forget to tap into our own selves and our own knowledge.
This is going to take us off track, but this is sitting out there and I'd be foolish to not jump on this. Girl, you need to be careful with that lesson because there's a fine line between tapping into yourself and then telling yourself that you can do it all by yourself.
Someone came from my neck.
And you need to make sure that as much as you're tapping into yourself, you are realizing that you alone can't do this work.
Woo,
And you better
that was the spirit. I feel like
and you
that
better
was the
release
spirit.
some of it to somebody or something
Okay.
because you can't
Okay.
care. I'm actually pretty sure someone's gonna let us know who went to this reading with us, but I'm pretty sure they said that because I was like, "Am I having deja vu right now?" And I'm like, "No." I'm pretty sure this was said to us in the session. Weren't we
What?
all sitting around and we said something and they were like, "You better not try to take all that on yourself."
Maybe that's happened. I don't remember. I don't remember none of that. But yes, I
Okay.
just said you also have to know your limitations.
Yeah.
And I don't always know my limitations, but back to spirituality and moments of clarity, because, the spirit can talk through anybody. And clearly, Jessica is the ancestors just spoke right through her,
Right through me.
right
you.
through her.
Called you out. Was like, "Girl,
And
let's talk about you can do this on your own."
Ooh, well, and I don't think I was saying on my own. What I was saying is tapping into the knowledge and the manifestation and the understanding and your divineness in order
Yeah.
to really realize different opportunities that exist.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be on my own. It could be, listen, I got a whole
Not on
community.
your own. Yeah. You
Mhm.
listen to yourself often, probably more than other people.
You know what? My grandmother used to say, I'm quoting her a lot. It was a grandma episode. Ain't nobody can love you except you can love yourself. And this is a
I
quote
know,
I
girl.
say,
That's what we
I
know.
say it
You have
daily.
that
I say it
tattoo
daily.
across. You have that tattoo across your forehead.
Jessica, each of us, and let's know,
Each of us
each
what?
of us has to really take our own divine path.
Yes, we do. That is
And there's
for
no one way.
sure.
There is no one way to find spirituality,
No.
find connectedness, find community. There is no one way.
No, I think the beauty, I'm glad you said that about community, because in all seriousness, I think the beauty of building a circle of people around you who you really trust and care about is because all of us have this unique connection to spirituality. When you need it, you can connect to all of those different things through
Right.
all of those people in your life. And so I feel really blessed that I truly feel like there's certain people in my life who've been placed as almost as vessels for me to be able to get to the space I need to get to through those people. And they've shown me the way that works for them in times where I can't search for anything myself because I don't have the strength to. And so I think in addition to finding what you need for your
Mm.
everyday, you better find those people around you who are just
Find
as
them
locked
people.
in to on their own spiritual journey so that you can tap into them when you need them. That's the circle of people you need.
Find your people and find your practice that
Mhm.
works for you. It's not one size fits all. It's whatever makes you happy, comfortable, and fulfilled. And that's what I want to tell. That's what I want to say to our listeners.
And you know what'll really make you feel fulfilled? Like and subscribe. Okay.
Like and subscribe and listen and share. And listen, call us
Virgo, Capricorn, Taurus.
Leo. The season is coming. Always.
Hey, it's Jessica. Thanks for listening to Girl Call Me. If you have something to add or a story to share, come on over to Instagram or Facebook and join the conversation. Also, make sure you follow and subscribe Girl Call Me. You don't want to miss when we release new episodes. Thanks for listening.